Before then, meantime, Ben Pyle joins us, the climate researcher and writer. Afternoon to you, Ben. Can you hear us, Ben?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hey, we've got you there. So there was a vague delay then for a moment. I'm glad you were there. It's timely you're on with us today because this story broke in the last day or so about the ULEZ zone and the deputy mayor asking the scientists if they could sort of change the wording on their conclusions, which thankfully they didn't. But nonetheless, the question was asked. Now, maybe I'm old school, Ben. I would have thought that's illegal to ask that, bearing in mind what the stakes are here. We're talking about elected officials, people who run the capital, a scheme where they're asking people for money and fining them if they don't pay the money when they're due to. And yet the deputy, the person in charge of this, is asking a scientist to reword their conclusions. I mean, that just smells all shades of wrong to me.
Yeah, I don't know about illegal, but it's certainly not very scientific, and it gives the lie to the claim that green policies in general, and this one in particular, is founded in science. Clearly, Shirley Rodrigues, the Deputy Mayor for Energy and Environment, has been found trying to put her own words into the mouths of those scientists, and it's institutional science that we sort of depend on for objective analysis. I mean, I think there's problems with that expectation. It's certainly not, something that stood up to any scrutiny. But it's not just the researchers at Queen Mary University that Shirley Rodrigues has been approaching. There's actually much. Sarah Napton, the journalist in Telegraph who produced this investigation, also ran a story at the end of last week discovering actual collusion between the chair of the Environmental Research Group at Imperial College, and they're plotting together. They're arranging friendly, to use her own word, media interviews with a rival station, and the professor leading that research group, Professor Kelly, asking Shirley Rodrigues what words she would like him to use to belittle and diminish other scientists that had suggested that Sadiq Khan's policies weren't working. So this is quite a remarkable level of interference. And according to the same investigation, and perhaps this sheds some light on it, City Hall had given that research organisation £800,000 for its work. And I'd add that work is not peer-reviewed, and it's based on work that Professor Kelly himself had produced 5 years ago for another government department, the Committee on the Medical Effects of Air Pollutants, where there was actually a split in that committee, where one half said, we're not going to put our name to this because we don't think that estimates of mortality risk, this is where the 4,000 deaths come from, are safe. We do not think they are founded in good science, and we think there's a very good chance that will mislead the public. Well, it turns out that they may be a minority of that committee, but they were right. And Sadiq Khan and other scientists, including the chair of that committee, have gone on to mislead the public with those statistics, those false statistics, which are and they're complicated things, but they are. People think that science produces facts, but these are statistical estimates. They're not peer-reviewed, and they're not explaining causal mechanisms for how air pollution may be causing these deaths. They just look at the average of the population, and then they try and work out what level of exposure that population was exposed to and when they died, and that's just not science.
We keep using the very statistical construct, but that's exactly what it is, of course, and it's the oldest game in town, isn't it, if you want to make something work. And I guess one of the other points, Ben, that I raised a little earlier is that it's within what seems like about half an hour that climate change has found itself in the same place as things like racism, where if you want to challenge something, you're seen as a sort of denier. It's like denying racism, when actually we all want cleaner air, of course we do, and there's an evolution underway anyway in engineering and house building that will absolutely see to that. But the minute you question even mad science or mad interpretations of science that we're hearing from City Hall and the Deputy Mayor, the minute you go there, there's a sizable chunk of people who are ready to pounce on you and tell you that you're a denier of some kind, that you're not taking it seriously, that you're going to be responsible for the planet dying, etc. And that is what I think scares some people, and that's why it's become so politicised, because the left seem very, very happy to associate themselves with ULEZ. In fact, they want it to be right across the country in places because they sense that they're on the side of all things that are good.
Yeah, that's right. And they went further than calling us merely deniers, by the way. They called us Nazis.
Yes.
And they briefed the media, and even the BBC were briefed to call us Nazis for saying there's something wrong with ULEZ policies. And that's calling even a great number of people from all manner of backgrounds in London. London's a very mixed, ethnically mixed place. And Together, the Together Association, which is behind some of those protests and groups that have been working with them, they're made of all sorts of people, and so these smears and these attacks really didn't allow for a debate, and that's the, I mean, again, to go back to the point of being able to rely on institutional science to give us the right information. If you're a young researcher, maybe you've just got your PhD, or maybe you're working on your PhD at one of these institutions, and you see that level of political hostility to people who step outside of that consensus, and you see your professors and your supervisors briefing the media on the right political messaging, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to say what you believe is true, or are you going to conform to what the expectations of you are? So I think that's really damaging for science and society and democracy.
I did spot a kind of, if you like, a subsidiary, a supplementary story to this of Londoners buying up classic cars to try and dodge the ULEZ charge. I don't know how much truth is there in that, because I would imagine if you could afford a nice classic car, you can probably afford the £12.50, or maybe it's symbolic. But nonetheless, the dealers have said they've witnessed a surge in interest as the capital braces for the £12.50 charge across 32 boroughs next week. But one way out of it is if you drive a car that's recognised and registered as being classic, you don't have to pay it, Ben.
Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe. Well, my car's so old it must be nearly a classic car anyway. I think it may just be inside the current ULEZ window, but that window is going to move. Yeah. So they're going to clamp down. I mean, this is never trust. You know, it's never just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, if I may put it that bluntly. It's always going to be longer than that. And it started off with the low emission zone, then it's the ULEZ zone, then it's the expanded ULEZ zone. It's not going to stop just because it's achieved its goals. And if you read the exchanges between some of the scientists and the politicians and the political activists that are involved in this, they are talking about people not having cars. And if you are in the situation where you're lucky enough to be able to afford an EV, don't be smug, because pretty soon they're going to come after your EV too, if you even are able to charge it, if you live somewhere where you can charge it, because those same air pollution researchers have identified that the EVs are in fact a greater source of air pollution, of particulate air pollution, because being heavier, they put more wear on the tyres and the brakes, and that puts more particulate matter into the atmosphere. So they're coming for your EV.
Yeah, and there is. I mean, some of these people are they're in love with this. We've been sort of loosely discussing this 15-minute city thing, and I know that means different things to different people, but from this aspect that we're discussing, there is a group who believe that actually, whether it's 15 minutes or half an hour, whatever, the principle is that you won't need a car, basically, because everything will be on hand. Transport will be amazing. The air will be beautiful. The birds will be singing. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, they'll all be around you somewhere. And 15 minutes means that, or thereabout, means you've got fitness involved in that, so we get better exercise, and life becomes this utopian dream. I mean, it's a very curious, in fact, it's sort of hard Marxist ideology disguised as a sort of kindly philosophy when it's anything but, really, and probably completely unworkable. But they'll give it a go. Yeah,
well, it's definitely ideology. I don't know how Marxist it is, and it's definitely green ideology. and they've crafted these ideas about how everyone's going to live their lives in this eco-utopia. But at the end of the day, it's only these targets, it's only emissions reductions targets for CO2, and it's only restrictions on where you can go that are legally enforceable. All of the promises that people make about the upsides from these policies, that we're going to have green growth, the green industrial revolution, or that people are going to be healthier, are not legally enforceable. There's no law mandating that everyone is healthier, right? And I don't think it's true anyway. Just from a practical point of view. I live here on the north coast of Kent, and we get hundreds, thousands, perhaps even more people from London coming here throughout the summer, and they bring their cars with. What the point I'm making is that the car enables that transport. Now, it's true, you could go and hop on the train, but it's 2 hours from London, and it's probably going to be another hour from wherever you live in London to get to that place. So that's 6 hours round trip from something that's going to take you 90 minutes each way in the car. So all of the opportunities that are created by private transport, by perhaps a relatively poor family who can nonetheless afford a runaround, can get out to the countryside, can take their kids to healthy sporting activities, can go for days out, can even have holidays in a car. You can chuck a tent in the back of a car and either go to France or to Wales, to Cornwall, even Scotland, just on a whim. You don't have to find the money for public transport, which is incredibly expensive when compared against, economic ownership of if you're buying a budget car. So all of those opportunities for healthy lifestyles and exercise will be taken away from people, in fact, by these policies, not extended. So I think green utopians talk a lot of rubbish, and they don't actually know how people live currently or how they're going to live.
Yes, there's a sort of Islington mindset that's sort of taken over, a kind of madness, which and considered to be something that we're all thinking and we ain't. Listen, Ben, thank you as ever. Ben Pyle, climate researcher and writer. We didn't even get on to the kind of huge contradiction. I'm looking at social media and people going, well done, India, it's fantastic. Over here in Notting Hill, we are delighted you've done it. Yeah, while simultaneously supporting a ULEZ charge and at the same time supporting a massive rocket, which must be the equivalent of about 50 billion cars going up there. What's going on, Alex Phillips?